spring 1940, Zora Neale Hurston, the celebrated Harlem Renaissance writer and anthropologist, arrived in Beaufort, South Carolina, to study religious trances. For more than 10 years, Hurston had skirted danger traveling alone across the American South and Caribbean, documenting rural Black people's lives and collecting their stories. Educated at Howard University and Barnard, during her lifetime, Zora Neale Hurston was considered the foremost authority on Black folklore.
She's interested in all elements of Black folk. She allows that culture to be dynamic, to have a voice in modernity.
The myth of the Flying African is one of the oldest and most powerful African-American folktales ever told. There are many variations of the story told in narratives by enslaved Africans and their descendants through the centuries, all centering around the notion of Black people who suddenly and miraculously left. By literal flight, by drowning, by vanishing, or by the power of their own mind, they were gone and became spirits of wind after uttering an incantation. This incantation has been passed down from storyteller to storyteller, and it is called Kumbuba Yali, Kumbuba Tambe, Kumkonku Yali, Kumkonku Tambe. Those words, or a variation of them, have been uttered in connection with the myth of the Flying African in some form. In the opening dedication to Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon, it says, "The fathers may soar, and the children may know their names."
When we look at the development of the mythology or the ritual, the ceremony, the story behind the traditions of the creator, the African, the original story, developed out of concepts that looked at a creator in many different aspects. Africans see the creator in all things. They see one creator, but the creator is in all things.
So over the years, African people have been the subject of many just scandalous campaigns to make it appear that we're something that we're not.
They call it animism. They say we worship rocks and trees and animals.
That we are barbaric.
I'm gonna take her back to the ship.
Better all get out of here before they think to cut us off from the beach.
I guess so, but tell them we'll be back tomorrow to make friends.
To make it appear that we are ungodly, polytheistic, all of these different types of things.
In the African system, the divinity is the totality of creation, and it is the only thing that exists. And everything else is an expression of an aspect of the divine essence.
The research that Zora Neale Hurston did in Beaufort, South Carolina, represents someone who understands that for people to trust you, you have to be in it. And that's what she does. She joins in with them.
She's playing a drum. At the time, this seemed scandalous, that you weren't standing off to one side with your white lab coat and your clipboard noting down what others were doing.
Zora studied her own people, which is not something that is supported in anthropology at that moment.
Anthropology understood itself to be a science. An aspect of scientific inquiry that's really important is to be detached and objective. She didn't play by those rules.
From the Jazz Age through the Great Depression, Hurston had published her extensive research in prestigious academic journals, popular magazines, and ethnographic books. But it was her fiction, thick with dialect, cultural specificity, and richly drawn characters, that over time would cement her place as one of the most important writers of the 20th century.
She was an innovator, using stylistic conventions of literature, but the content is rooted in the research that she did.
She was driven by her own integrity, she was driven by her own passion, and she was driven by her own sense of how best to collect this folklore.
Throughout her entire life, the powerful people around her consistently thought of her as being an outsider, less than talented, a marginal figure.
We're talking about somebody who had an incredibly creative, fierce mind.
Her independent streak and her iconoclasm, you could say it was both her superpower and her fatal flaw.
In 1927, Hurston received a fellowship for $1,400 and drove to Florida in her own car, which she affectionately called Sassy Susie, to collect folklore.
After she came back from Bernard College, she said she went home to Eatonville and in her best Bernardese accent would ask her old neighbors, what do you know about folklore and folk songs? And the neighbors say, nothing like that around here. Said, maybe over in the next county. So she stopped talking Bernardese and really, got with them.
Hurston met and married her Howard University classmate Herbert Sheen. But the marriage would not survive the honeymoon stage. Zora, who has often claimed to have visions that have guided her through her life, was hearing the beckoning call of her profession. It was a calling she could not resist. Zora returned by car to New York City with Langston Hughes. It was upon her return that she would meet Charlotte Osgood Mason, once again coming to another crossroad in her life. Under Mrs. Mason's employment, Zora began to accumulate the field research that would later help shape all of Hurston's writings into one of the greatest literary contributions ever made by a single author. At the end of the fall semester, Zora would be the first African American to graduate with a Bachelor of Arts degree from Barnard College. Immediately, Hurston set her eyes toward the southern horizon, where she would begin her journey in search of the authentic voice of the Negro furthest down. Little she may have known, it was a journey that would take her entire life to travel.
Hurston was an ethnographer. Her stories, her ethnography came from two primary places. One was the all-black town of Eatonville, Florida, and the other was the turpentine and lumber camps that were proliferated in the South after the end of slavery. She went into those camps, which were places of extreme labor conditions, extremely oppressive labor conditions. And she went in and recorded culture. She recorded their songs, their stories, their jokes, and she gives us then a window on their inner world.
She then moves to New Orleans to begin research on Hoodoo, Conjure, and the legendary Hoodoo priestess Marie Laveau.
Voodoo is infused in that life, and it is a source, a rich source of folklore in America. And the lore that is in New Orleans is definitely about the voodoo and the practices of the people. So you couldn't escape it. And in the course of her work, she understood the dual vision that was a part of that culture.
In June 1930, Hurston worked on the play Mulebone with Langston Hughes, only to later break with Hughes over its authorship. In August of 1933, luck started to turn for Zora. She moved to Sanford, Florida, and wrote Jonah's Gourdvine in just 9 weeks. And in May 1934, it's published, quickly becoming a Book of the Month club selection. She follows that success in October 1935 with the publishing of Mules and Men.
Hurston had completed and published a volume of folklore, Mules and Men, and as a follow-up to that, she wrote a grant application to the Guggenheim Foundation in New York City and said that she wanted to extend the research that was made up the third portion of Mules and Men, which was called Hoodoo in New Orleans. And she wanted to do a comparative analysis by traveling to the Caribbean and looking at similar beliefs and practices in the Caribbean.
The following year, she's awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship and travels to Jamaica to study West Indian Obeah practices and to Haiti, where she wrote, "Their eyes were watching God in only 7 weeks."
At that point in Haiti, you hear this phrase less often in the present day, on est respect, which is a Creole phrase that means honor and respect. But this is the traditional Haitian greeting. And I think that Hurston is somebody who just embodied that whole ethos of honor and respect. And at the same time, a creative person and somebody who did not just learn somebody's language, but would also learn their songs, would learn their dance steps. A person who was relating to everybody in a respectful but an equal footing.
When we give a voodoo ceremony, we put out all the things the gods like and invite them to come down and join us. Since the spirits are normally invisible, they have to take human form so that we can see them. When you are possessed, the spirit who comes in, the body will take the character of that spirit. So we say that once you are possessed, you are no longer yourself, because for that span of time, your own spirit is no longer in your body. If the spirit who comes in is Legba, he will arrive as an old man who is too old and crippled to walk. If the spirit is Dambala, he arrives as a snake and must be given eggs to eat. We give the god the things that he likes. Then the god can sing, dance, and join the ceremony. The gods can talk to us. They advise us on our problems or tell us about the future. We trust the gods because they know everything about us.
It can be beautiful when you really think how the gods can travel in 5 seconds when you need them. How they can tell you what's going to happen 5 years from now. If you're going to pass an exam, if you're going to get a job, if you have a kid who's sick, and one of the gods tells you to do this, do that, and the child will feel much better.
Her friendship was with the common man, the common woman, the woman who had a garden and did not work or worked in the tomato fields. As she walked along Avenue D from 17th Street to the Chronicle to turn in her article, she would stop in the houses along the avenue and have coffee in the kitchen with those mothers. So she had friends. It was just not the teachers and etc. But she also had friends across the track. Bina Backus, Ann Wilder.
She was friendly now. I mean, she had friends in her neighborhood there who actually looked at her. Somebody would probably check on her every day. They would come over and they'd sit around on the east side of the house and tell stories and talk.
She had to have been very sick when she got here. We do know she had those illnesses: bad heart, high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis, just about everything that you get. And I want to think that she felt like, you know, I don't have long, but I got all these words I've got to put on paper.
She had her stroke, and ironically, that's when her insurance dropped her policy. But the St. Lucie County Welfare Group was able to provide her funds for prescription medication, as well as some food stamps, and then later they admitted her into Lincoln Park Welfare Home.
A good name is truly to be valued above silver and gold. At least back then that was the case. Nowadays, with the advent of television, doesn't seem to matter much anymore. Anyway, it had its good side. I returned here to Fort Pierce and a job teaching at the Lincoln Park Academy. and a chance to get my hands back in the soil, raise me some beautiful flowers and vegetables, and dangle my pole in the water every now and then for some sure enough good eating. After all is said and done, that's what living is all about. Being close to nature. Of course, now, when you come here with a charge on your life, and you got something inside you that old Maker give you to do, your life takes on a flavor you can't do nothing about. So you might as well just make up your mind to hang on and enjoy the ride whenever possible. See, I knew from my visions at the age of 9 what my life was going to be about. I can truly say I have lived this one on my own terms.
That's quite some life, Miss Hurston.
I have known the joys and pain of deep friendship. I have served and been served. I have made myself some good enemies, of which I am not the least bit sorry. I have loved unselfishly. I have fondled hatred with the red-hot tongues of hell. That's living. And as far as death, I'm not afraid. What is there to be afraid of? The stuff of my being is matter, ever changing, ever moving, never lost. Nothing is destructible. It merely changes forms. When this consciousness we know as life ceases to be, I know that I shall still be part and parcel of the world. So when it's my time to rendezvous with old death, I shall lift my glass in a welcoming toast. Look forward to the adventures on the other side of the horizon.
That's quite some story, Miss Hurston. You need your rest.